Okay. Okay. Oh. Okay. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining once again for our next class in this course, Advice for Life. Takes even halacha, even in Jewish law, it says this is a month of better luck. It says if you want to buy a house, this is a good month to do it. This is the month of Adar is considered a month of a special mazel. And I think we saw this. We saw this last night with the good news of 2 hostages being released. And hopefully this will lead to many more and the rest of them being brought home. So definitely it is an opportune time to gather and to be joyous, which will lead us to today's discussion. So today we are discussing the idea of family. We are going to, they say, and I'm sorry if you heard this one, it's an old famous one. They say about a boy who goes over to his mom and says, "Mom, where do we come from?" So the mom says, "We come from, we Adam and Eve, and Adam and Eve were created from God, the soul." And then a couple of minutes later, the boy goes over to his father and asks the same question, and comes back to his mom and says, "I asked Dad the question, and Dad says, we come from apes, and there was through a whole process of evolution." And she says he was talking about his side of the family. So today we're going to be talking about family. And family, as we all know, family is complicated. Family is complicated. Family is complex. And every family that we have, everyone has family. And it all is complex. Everyone has different types of relationships. And everyone either has or had relationships, whether it was with a parent, with a child, with a sibling, with an aunt, with an uncle. And again, families are something which, there's no perfect family. All families have the kinks they have to work out. And the closer the family, the more issues there could become, because again, you're dealing with each other on a regular basis. So how are we to work out how are we able to create a strong family unit? What is the Torah approach? They say if someone doesn't believe in ghosts, just go to a family reunion. Every family has those things they have to work out. And we take a look, Torah is not just a book which tells us on how to, have a kosher home or how to keep Shabbat, but Torah is something which is supposed to give guidance and give advice on every aspect of our lives. And therefore, last week, we spoke about the workplace. Last week, we spoke about how we're able to work in a more wholesome way. And we spoke about, if you remember, we spoke that Torah tells us, and again, when we speak about Torah through the guidance of the Lubavitcher Rebbe, who people from all walks of life went to ask his guidance, and how we're supposed to look at work. What is the Jewish approach on work, and how work is inherently holy? Most people think in the American society, most people think work is a necessary evil. I work in order to be able to provide for my family, to be able to every once in a while go on vacation, to be able to, to have some money in the bank account for when I retire. But Torah says work is something which is holy for 3 reasons. If you remember, we spoke about, first of all, that is the purpose of creation, be able to elevate the mundane. And there's nothing more mundane than our 9 to 5, than where we work. That's where we spend so many hours, poring over whether it's the computer or the spreadsheet. So that over there, if we do it in an ethical way, we do it in an honest way, we are uplifting creation. We are fulfilling the reason of creation. That was reason number 1. Reason number 2 is through work, we are able to come in contact with people who would never be able to come to contact otherwise, be able to influence them. And that is our job. Our job is when we come in contact with people, we are supposed to influence them. So this is not just limited to 9 to 5. Even someone who doesn't have a 9 to 5, everyone comes into contact with people, whether it's at your workplace, whether it's, when you're going to play mahjong, when you're going to the supermarket, when you're meeting with a friend, wherever, whatever it is, you have the ability to influence others. And finally, the work is holy because when we're able to work, we're able to give. And God, when we're able to give from what we have, we become partners in creation. Most of our lives, we are takers, we are receivers. We receive from our parents, we receive from society, we receive. When we are able to go beyond ourselves and give, we are mimicking and we are mirroring God, what God does to this world. And that is something which we have to understand is something precious. And therefore we have this attitude to work, recognizing work is holy, so that should affect the way we work. We spoke about different ideas in how we work. We have to work with a certain level of faith, of emunah bitachon, recognizing that while I work, ultimately it comes from Hashem, it comes from God. A second idea is taking the guidelines of the Torah. Torah says these are the days you should work, and then there's Shabbat. We stop working on Shabbat. A third idea we said is making sure in every single day in the workplace or before you start the workplace, the idea of learning Torah. And I was very happy. I'm not going to say any names, but before the lesson started, someone told me they took this to heart. And since then, every single morning they started learning some Tanya, and beautiful to hear. And finally, the idea of giving tzedakah, which again, when we give tzedakah, we're all able to uplift this world. So that was last week. Last week we discussed our workplace, but today we go to the home. Today we go to the home, and every single one of us has come from a home. Every single one of us has, was born to parents, whether it's have siblings or have an uncle, and again, as we said, family life can be difficult. They say the story of three elderly women who sit down, and one says, "Oi." The second one says, "Oy vey." The third one says, "I thought we agreed we're not going to talk about the kids." So the question is, how are we able to create a strong family unit in a healthy way, according to the Torah? Yeah. I had one and I forgot it at home. I'll have to get it for you. And how do we have a family that works together and, working towards a common goal? And this is something I want to say. I'm not sure I said this last week. Some people may say, we're coming to a class, and it's a Torah class, but maybe I'm not religious. And maybe why would this speak to me? If I'm not a religious person. But the truth is, if you talk about the people that went to the Lubavitcher Rebbe, we're not talking about religious people. The people that wrote and went for his advice were from the most secular people. Avowed atheists went to the Rebbe. And this is because the advice that the Lubavitcher Rebbe gave is something which obviously is coming from a religious standpoint, but this is something which can be used to live a wholesome life, whether you're religious or not. Now, obviously, the Rebbe wanted people to become closer to Torah and mitzvos. But even a person is going to say, I'm taking this just to live a better life, to be able to live a more wholesome life. That itself is something which you're able to accomplish through today's class and hopefully through all 6 classes that we're going to be taking. Because again, this is not just taken from a religious standpoint, but as we understand, as we believe, Torah gives guidance in every aspect of life, and whether you're religious or not. So how do we usually portray a family? What is the general portrayal of a family? No, I'm talking about like in a metaphor. In a metaphor, we speak about a family tree. We speak about a family tree. We speak about extended family. There is the family tree. Now, why do we call it a family tree? What is the significance of a tree? So, on a very simple level, you take a look at a family tree, and your grandparents and your aunts and uncles and going up. It's kind of branches out. It branches out in many different areas. But the truth is, Torah tells us there's actually a deeper idea. There's a deeper depth of why we call it a family tree. Because what does a tree need in order to survive? It needs to have, what are the 3 main components? We have to have what allows a tree to flourish. You have to have nourishing nutrients, the soil, abundance of water, and warm sunlight, which tells us that in order for something to grow, especially when we speak about a tree, and as the Torah tells us, we are compared to a tree. A human is compared to a tree. So just like a tree has to have different ideas in order to be able to blossom, so too, and be able to healthy and strong, so too, our family. And again, we speak about a tree. The tree is connected to roots. It has roots, and that is how it grows. Our family is our roots. We all have roots, and this is our parents and grandparents, and it's roots upon roots upon roots. But in order for that family, for our roots to be able to then grow into a healthy tree, the question, we're going to need to have some ingredients. Just like a tree has some ingredients, so too, if we want to be able to take the Torah's approach, again, based on the teachings of the Lubavitch Rebbe, and how to be able to have that strong family and that strong connection with our family, with others, we are going to have to, similar to a tree, have some key ingredients. So let's go right away, open up to page 30. We're going to go to exercise 2.1. This is a question. You could take it, you could write it down, different answers, or you could just think about it. But this is something which is, I would say this is something which you should think about today, but really every day. Identify attitudes, behaviors, and values. And again, many times people think kind of mix those all together, but there's three different things here. There is an attitude, there's a behavior, and a value that sustain and fortify harmony within a family. No one wants to share perhaps an attitude. What would be an attitude that would sustain a harmony within a family? Respect. Okay, so that's where it gets a little bit. So I would think attitude. I would think respect is attitude, or that would be an attitude. Because you value the nucleus of a family, that's why you want to act respectful towards one another. You know, okay, a behavior. I don't want to give a behavior that would sustain and bring consideration, honor, yes, affection, encouragement. Okay, and what about a value? What would be a value that would? Yeah, that's true. That's correct. You know, definitely when, especially when it comes to perhaps a spouse, you want to share values. Yes, and the truth is, values and attitudes, you know, there could be a lot of, you know, mix and match over there. Kind of going from one to another. So today we're going to look at some of the wisdom that the Rebbe imparted in the area of strengthening a family. Now, some of the letters that we are going to speak about, we're going to see very clearly, were addressed to families that were on shaky ground, whether it was between parents and children, whether it was just in a general family dynamic, or some of them was between husband and wife. However, this is not, this advice that was given was, while it was given to someone who was struggling in this area, as the Rebbe himself said, as we're going to see, this can be used, whether you're struggling in this area or whether in your mind it's healthy, but you just want to strengthen it. No matter how good a dynamic is, it can always be strengthened. And this is a key thing. A person can never be satisfied with where their relationships are. And again, this is beyond just family. This is in a friends as well. This is in a workplace as well. If a person wants a healthy family environment, work environment, we always have to be working on strengthening it. So the Rebbe says, and this is, we'll take a look at text number 1. This is from a letter. Lubavitch Rebbe writes as follows: I received some information about the relationship at home, but I do not know to what extent it reflects the actual situation. Hence, I want to convey to you some thoughts in the light of what the relationship should be, according to the Shulchan Aruch, the Jew's practical guide to life. If the relationship is indeed in keeping with it, the purpose of this letter will be to strengthen and deepen it, as there's always room for improvement in all matters of goodness and holiness. Torah and mitzvos. On the other hand, if it is not quite what it should be, I trust that since the Torah is surely a lamp unto your feet, you will bring it up to the desired level, and you will do it with joy and gladness of heart. So here we have the Rebbe giving an entrance idea that everything we are going to hear today will apply to everyone. Now, in some people, it may apply to more areas than others, but every single person has those relationships. And whether you have a lot of family, whether you don't have too much family, everyone has those relationships. And some people, their family may not be biological. Some people, they're very close friends. I always think about my dream is that our community becomes a family. You hope that a community doesn't just remain as a community, but people really care for each other as if they're family. So the question is, how do you strengthen a community? So all what we're going to be discussing today is all areas of where, again, some people may be struggling with it more. Some people may be struggling with it less. But it's all areas that we can take and use it to hopefully strengthen a relationship that we already have. What? Yeah.
What is the expression, a lamp unto your feet?
This is based on a verse in Tehillim. In Tehillim, that King David writes, and never would use it very often. I'm not sure why, but this is again based on some. I could show you inside the Tehillim, but it's taken from Psalms.
What does it mean?
So it's explained that just like a candle makes that you will not stumble. You will not stumble in the darkness. You have a dark place, you could stumble. A candle lights up the area. So to the Torah is there that you should not stumble in the darkness. It should give you guidance and be able to give you direction to where you go in life. Okay, so a lamp of the. I mean, generally we put more like the flash in our head or something, but again, it's the idea of giving direction and guidance in life. What do you mean? Yes, that's a month. It's shortened as Av, but the month is Menachem Av. Yeah, it's it's generally people just refer to it short as Av, the 9th of Av, but it's also called as Menachem Av literally means the comfort of Av, because the month that we need to be comforted because it's the saddest month of the calendar. Okay, so now in 1974. The Rebbe gave a series of talks. And in these talks, the Rebbe spoke about the erosion of the family unit. And the Rebbe spoke about how we find out what happened in 1974 that preempted this talk. I'm not sure, to be honest. I don't know exactly if this came because of a story that happened. But the Rebbe in 1974 spoke about how there's a trend in families there is a lack of cohesiveness, where there's a lack of people working together. And I'm going to start off with text number 2. And it's a very interesting text. One of the elements crucial for any nation, especially the Jewish nation, is the is the preservation of the family unit. Unfortunately, this institution has been utterly neglected. The focus on the family unit is lacking, somewhat or significantly. Even amongst those who genuinely try to follow a Torah lifestyle, they set aside time for Torah study, fulfill mitzvahs meticulously, and even act with self-sacrifice to influence Jews who are spiritually disengaged. Yes, the father, mother, and children are walking a single path, the path of Torah and mitzvot. Nevertheless, they do not walk this path as a family. We readily observe the regrettable effects of the father, mother, son, and daughters living in 4 distinct worlds. Very interesting. The Rebbe is saying we're not talking about a dysfunctional family. Sometimes you take a look at a family and you see dysfunction. Over here, we see a family. They seem to be doing good things. The Rebbe is speaking about the religious aspect, but you can see a family, one of the children are the Girl Scouts, another child is a valedictorian. They seem to be an upstanding family. But the Rebbe was bemoaning that while they are doing good, they are doing it separately. They're not doing it together. They're not doing it as a family unit. And that, the Rebbe says, is regrettable. And I believe this is a unique perspective. Most people believe if the family is doing good things, what could be better? They're all doing good things. Let them do. But the Rebbe said, while good things is great, but you don't want to just do good things, but everyone in their own world, in their own separate world. We want to be able to do things together. So let's move to exercise. The next exercise 2.2. What adverse outcomes might arise from a lack of family unity? Any nation, okay? Anything else? What? Okay. Competitiveness. It's interesting. We get a magazine every single. We get a magazine. My house. We get a Jewish magazine called the Ami every single week. Gets mailed to us, and there's like a serial, like a fiction serial every single week, a different story, continuing in the story. And a few of them, and one of the stories is a family, or upstanding family, but you see there's erosion in the family because all the siblings are just deeply competitive with each other, constantly trying to outdo one another. Right. That is something also which can lead, when there's no family unity, that can lead to competitiveness. I believe, emotional support will diminish. We hopefully a healthy family, people rely on each other for emotional support. If that is lacking, then, family members will feel isolated, can feel lonely. Anyone else? Any other ideas? What? Politics is something, unfortunately, we see greatly, especially in the past 5 to 10 years. Families break apart, and it really fragments the family. Now, here's the next question. Unfortunately, and this is a fact. This is not, this is not just the, this is a fact that in the past 50 years, the family unity has been deeply eroded. I remember seeing some really very sad studies that were done. I believe 25% of Americans have a sibling that they have not spoken to for many years. I believe I think I saw over 70%. I believe over 70% of people have a relative. It could be a child, a parent, an aunt, an uncle that they don't speak to. There is definitely a erosion in family unity. Any ideas what is the cause for this? The fact in the past 30, 40, 50 years, this seems to be a very deep struggle in society at large. What would be contributing factors?
You can't just like say, okay, we disagree on this one area, but other than that, we're part of the unit, and like put their differences aside into one area, like politics or whatever, and they can't find a common ground. So instead of like focusing on the one thing you disagree on, you should like look at all the other things that you could agree on, and that would build.
True. Correct. Yes. Any other reasons why in the recent history, internet, but that's a good one. That very good one. Communication. The fact that communication has become so, and social media, that has definitely caused erosion in families, and the fact that what? Okay, that's interesting. I never heard of that one before. Okay. Yes.
Families, I think of my mother's family where she was one of 6. And for the most part, they were very close, all the siblings. They kind of needed each other. Somebody would hire the other one when they needed a job, et cetera, et cetera. And that doesn't exist anymore. Either in terms, except yours, of course, of large families, because people don't have large families anymore, or even the fact of knowing that you can count on a sibling or relative should a situation arise that you need something.
Okay. Money. Okay. The fact. What do you mean by that? Because that could be taken in a few different ways. What do you mean by that?
Especially in families, there is a will. And
okay.
Somebody gets more and the other one gets less.
But why would that be more in the? I mean, there was always the idea of will. Why would that have been increased in the past 30, 40, 50 years?
Again, because of the internet. They want to grow more, they want to buy more, they want to see more.
Okay. So I think there single parent household. That's correct. I would add to that, and the fact that today, many times you have, and this is through no fault of the people, but many times you have to have both parents who are out of the house for many, many hours, and there's less of a family, maybe there can't be a family dinner coming together. I remember seeing a study that studies show that a family that sits together and has dinner together every night, I don't remember the exact numbers, but the chances that the children will go into drugs and all different types of things are lowered by I believe it was over 70%. And a lot of times because of, people need a career, I was going back to money, perhaps because maybe families can't survive over maybe a single income, or they both, and this is not a bad thing, but it can erode at the fabric of a family. I believe there's also the idea of today, we are very into individualism. The fact that everyone, my individualism, and if I feel threatened, so I'll cut off contact. Back then, there was a lot more, we're here as a group. And today, it's all about, people are, perhaps you want to call it more selfish, more about me. Yes?
I grew up with 20 cousins, literally. My children's children are growing up with none because no one lives here with them.
Okay. You're saying we're more spread out? We're
Yes.
more spread out? Okay. So it's, we're going over here. What?
You need to understand that people who have every Friday night sitting together are more united than people that are not sitting together at least once a week.
Yeah, we're gonna get to that. We're gonna get to that. That is what you're saying is very true. Yes.
Well, in my family, it's so important. Family, brother, sister,
Right. It was a lot more of a value. It was a lot more of a
The most important
Yes.
is we know we-
Yep. Yes. 111. Okay.
They all grew up together. And after the parents passed, they always met, all of them met once a month. And they had a great time, but they all met, to see what was going, they were always tight. And that's the way, I also.
Yeah. So I think what we're getting to right now, all of us, with all these things you said, and everything we said was correct, is what the Rebbe says is based upon one core issue. And that is the issue of the value of a family, the value system. In other words, what we've been speaking about are many behaviors that come from a lack of the proper value system in the family. If we are able to strengthen the value system of a family, as some of you mentioned, then a lot of the, if we're trying to cure, as we all know, you can put a Band-Aid on something. There's an issue, I'm going to deal with that direct issue, but not get to the core of what that issue is coming from. Or you could try to remedy the actual, what the core of it is. And the Rebbe, whenever people come to the Rebbe with family issues, the Rebbe would try to get to the core. The Rebbe would try to say, you have to have the proper value system. And once you recognize what that value system is, then a lot of the issues, the underlying issues, will kind of evaporate on its own. Okay, so that will bring us to our first lesson video that I spoke about last week. This is a different course than general. This is more of a multimedia course. And today we will have 4 different videos. And in this first one, the Rebbe will speak about the importance of, or through someone saying how the Rebbe spoke to them, the importance and the value system of a family.
Rabbi Yitzhak Meir Gurari is Mashpia of the Lubavitcher Yeshiva in Montreal.
Inspiring the volume a little bit.
Rabbi Yitzhak Meir Gurari is Mashpia of the Lubavitcher Yeshiva in Montreal. His father, Rabbi Zalman Gurari, was a devoted chassid and a financial supporter of the Rebbe's work.
In a certain time, there was around Tafshi Yutes, my father did business in overseas with big rich people. Rashag, who was in charge of the yeshiva, asked my father that when he goes over there, he should take him along, introduce him to those people. He should be able to raise money for the yeshiva. My father says, okay, I'll do it on one condition. If you get the Rebbe to promise me that if we're successful, he'll give me a broche for whatever I ask for him. So he went to the Rebbe, and the Rebbe said, okay, made a deal. They came, so the Itake went with him, and they were very successful. When they came back, so my father told Rashag, so he went to the Rebbe, and the Rebbe said, okay, tell him to come in. So he came in, so he asked the Rebbe, what do you want? So the Rebbe asked him, what do you want? I told you, what do you want? My father then had a problem, a big business problem. So I'm proud, I don't know myself what. He needed a nest. And he wanted the Rebbe to give him a broche that he should have this nest. So the Rebbe said, you have a chance de ausbetten alles was du willst. Die erste Sache Batman, am soll haben Nachs für Kinder. Die Kinder sollen sein, fromme Kinder sollen auswachsen, dass sie wieder bei ihm will. So mein Vater says, I was so better das. I said, okay, they gave a bracha. I don't know if he asked, gave a bracha for the business deal, that I don't know, but my father repeated this very often.
The Rebbetzin loved the Rebbe with all her heart. I mean, the Rebbe loved the Rebbetzin with all his heart. He always showed great concern for her, and he was always telling me, please go after this visit immediately to the Rebbetzin to reassure her that things are okay, because she's always so worried. And vice versa, the Rebbetzin just had such a great admiration and respect for her man. The Rebbe cherished his private tea party with the Rebbetzin. The Rebbe said that he equates the importance of the tea party with his wife on a daily basis with the necessity to put on tefillin.
Sasemanies, e for a Maria aussi.
Na prochaine avenue, don't postpone it. God Almighty bless you.
Ça, c'est mon directeur en Suisse,
Yeah.
à la Banque multicommerciale à Genève.
Bracha batzlach. Bracha fashida. And Bekor Mama here.
Thank you very much. We are always good partners. I'm very glad.
Yeah. You can tell him that it is a good for the fame of the bank. It is good when they see the director has a happy family life.
C'est le directeur pour faire happy family
God
life.
Almighty
Okay.
bless you.
Thank you very much.
Bracha
Thank you.
batzlach.
Yeah. I mean, they're all beautiful videos. I find that second video be fascinating. Here, that was the Rebbe's doctor, Dr. Ira Weiss, after the Rebbe had a very severe heart attack in 1978. On Simchas Torah, the Rebbe had a heart attack, and he was flown from Chicago. He was a world-renowned cardiologist, and from then on, he took care of the Rebbe's health and the Rebbe's wife, the Rebbe's health. And he says that the Rebbe told him that, having my one-on-one, again, the Rebbe was busy the whole day. The Rebbe, again, answering letters to hundreds and thousands of people and delivering talks and writing books. And yet the Rebbe said, for me, to have that cup of tea, the 2 minutes a day spending that alone time with my wife, with the Rebbetzin, is for me as important as putting on tefillin. Now, the Rebbe wasn't saying, putting on tefillin is a mitzvah in the Torah. To have a cup of tea is not with your wife is not a mitzvah. But the Rebbe was saying an importance to me, it has the same priority. Because again, the Rebbe was speaking about himself. The idea of having a strong family, and again, the Rebbe was, so to say, giving guidance to him, to Ira, because I believe in a different video. I believe in a different video. Ira said at that time he was experiencing some, marital issues. They were having some, and the Rebbe was saying you're a world-renowned doctor, but you have to put aside time to be able to work on strengthening that. So here we have the Rebbe saying you have to have the value of a strong family. Now, what is the value of a strong family? What is the benefit of a strong family? But the truth is, I think that question itself, what is the benefit of a strong family itself, is a faulty question. Because when you speak about a benefit, what does a benefit mean? A benefit has a connotation that it's a means to an end. There's a benefit of me eating healthy or eating properly, that I should be healthy. I should live longer. So that means a benefit is something which will get me somewhere. The idea of having a strong family is not a means to end. It is the end itself. It is the idea of, this is something which will, what is the benefit of having fresh air to breathe or of being free? They're not benefits. This is life itself. So the Rebbe is saying that the idea of having that strong family unit is something which we need to, is so important in the Torah. Now, where do we see in the Torah itself that the idea of a family is so important? The idea of having the family value, the family unit, is so important. So as we're going to see, we're going to bring three sources to the idea of the importance of a family. The first one is text number 3. When God counted the Jewish people, in addition to the census of the entire nation equaling 603,550, the Torah emphasizes and repeats that its members were counted according to their families, to the houses of their fathers, meaning that they were counted as family units. Counting is something which shows an expression of love. Why do you count something? You count something because this is important to me. You know, whether you're a collector, whether you're constantly looking at your bank account, whether it's something, when you count something, it means if there's no value to it, you're not going to count it. Counting is an expression of love. Now, when the Torah counts the Jewish people, if you take a look at the text, when the Torah counts the Jewish people, it says, count the congregation of Israel according to their families, to the houses of their fathers. Why are we counting them as families? To tell us that what is the most beautiful way that we can count you, the Jewish people, is when they're with their families, when their families are working as a unit. Here is the first idea. The first idea where we see in Torah the value of a family. What is the second idea? The second idea is actually very fascinating. This is more Kabbalistic. Text number 4. The Torah's mystical teachings.
Rabbi?
Yes.
Rabbi?
Yes, Abba.
Can I ask a question? You're talking about counting, but
yes,
we don't count. When we line the kids up at school, it's not
right. So,
not 2,
100%. 100%. When we speak about counting here, we speak about they were counted through the giving of the machzis shekel, the half shekel, but even then it was counted through the house, as a family. So you're right. It wasn't counted directly. It was counted indirectly through the half shekel. You're correct. You do not count. That is a good point. But even in the half shekel, it was done in a way of families and not individuals, to tell us that there is the importance of the family. Thank you. Second idea, again, this is more of a mystical idea. The Torah's mystical teachings strongly emphasize the importance of the family unit. The minimum requirement to fulfill the mitzvah to be fruitful and multiply is to give birth to a son and a daughter. Kabbalah and Chassidut explain that this is hinted at in the names of God, spelled with the letters Yud and Hey, followed by Vav and Hey. The Yud corresponds to the father, the first Hey to the mother, the Vav alludes to the male child, and the final Hey to the daughter. A family with all 4 elements, father, mother, daughter, and son, is a complete representation of the divine name. It follows then that just as the 4 letters of divine name, when ascribed together as a word, becomes a unique entity, God's personal name, so the individual of a family are fundamentally transformed into a new existence when they become a family unit. I want to take a look at the board. You have Yud, Hey, and then Vav and Hey, and then you have this represented by father, mother, son, and daughter. Now, I just want to make it clear. Who's the one that said this? The Lubavitcher Rebbe. I'm sure most of you know, the Lubavitcher Rebbe did not have any children of his own. So in other words, obviously, the Rebbe is not saying that a person could only have this by the idea, I have 5 boys, I don't have a daughter, so I still haven't done this. Obviously, sometimes people, through no fault of their own, will not be able to do this. But the whole point, and again, the Lubavitcher Rebbe himself was not able to do this, and yet the Rebbe is speaking about this because the Rebbe is speaking about the fulfillment that, in the most ideal way of a family unit. Now, for whatever reason, a person can accomplish that through this way. But again, the idea is speaking about the value of a family. And when we're able to have a strong family, that is not just something which is, that is a way we're able to actually connect to Hashem in a better way. We're able to bring God's divine down into this world in a stronger way. And this is in the relationships with any part of our family that we have. This could be between siblings, between a parent, or between good friends who you consider like a family. If they're a family to you and they're supportive like a family, when you strengthen that, that also becomes a way of bringing Hashem's divine, bringing Hashem's presence down into this world, which leads us to the next. And to me, this is the most powerful idea, very simple idea. And it's actually very connected to what the time we are in right now, because connected to this week's Parsha. This week's Parsha, this week's Parsha is Parshas Teruma. In Parshas Teruma, what do we discuss? We discuss starting the building of the tabernacle, of the Mishkan. And in this week's Parsha, in the first Aliyah, what does it say? It says, "V'asuli mikdash v'shachanti b'socham." Make for me a mikdash, a temple, a tabernacle, and I will rest in them. Chassidus right away, actually Rashi says, what do you mean I will rest in them? I'll rest in it. That would be the proper way. V'shachanti b'socho. What's b'socham? So Chassidus says, b'sochol echad v'echad. Within every single home, the idea of building that tabernacle, building a place for Hashem, was not just that one-time location in the desert or in Jerusalem. Every single home, a family together, when they're able to build a family based upon the values of Torah and mitzvos, they are bringing Hashem's presence into that home. And this is something which is so important. You know, many people think, where is God? I want to go to find God. Where is God? I'll go to Jerusalem. I'll go to the Western Wall, or maybe in a more close proximity, I'll go to Shul. I'll go to a study hall. This tells us, this next verse we're going to say, is the primary place you can find God is in your home. In your home, when you are able to make that strong family unit where people are supporting each other and you're living in an ethical way, in an honest place, and bringing Torah into your family, this is where you are able to feel God's even if you don't feel it, this is where God's presence is the most. Within us, but specifically in our home, when we're able to have a family unit, when we're able to be there with someone else, support someone else. And this is that we're going to see. This is even someone who's living alone. Many times people, for whatever, they're living alone. But if you're able to bring God into that home, and again, a home is ultimately, even if you're living alone, this is the home. And this is where you're able to bring God's presence in a revealed way. Let's take a look at text number 5. Yes, 100%. In communicating his directive to build a holy temple, God stated, "Build for me a temple, and I will dwell within them." Our sages note the anomaly of the verse that says "within them," the Jewish people, instead of "within it," the temple. This informs us that God wishes to dwell not only in his temple, but also within each of us. In truth, God's dwelling within us is not a secondary objective, but the primary objective of this directive. For if God's primary home was the temple, the Torah should have clearly stated that God would reside within it, while at the same time finding a way to hint at the concept that God also dwells within us. Instead, the reverse is the case. The Torah states openly, "I will dwell in them," indicating that this is the primary objective. The opening of the verse, "Build for me a temple," is simply the method by which the primary goal of dwelling within the Jewish people can be achieved. Where is the physical location of God's dwelling amongst us? In a home where father, mother, sister, and brother form a cohesive family unit. If you have a family which is quarreling one with another, and there's no unity, or even if they're quarreling one with another, but they're separate, they're distinct, they're not doing things as a unit, that is a place where God's presence is not as revealed and is not as manifested as when you have a family doing something together, as when you have a support system, as you're able to go to someone, you're able to be together. That is where God's presence is. This is, in the beginning of creation, what do we have? Hashem creates Adam and Eve together, together as one. What does God say? Lo tov hayos adam levado. It is not good for man to be alone. Let me make an Ezer connected. Let me make someone for him, someone against him, someone that they could be there together. Because ultimately, when we are able to have that strong family unit and cohesion, that is a place where God is able to become present. Here we have a dwelling for God. The family unit is God's method of choice for how to change the world for the better. Let's move on to the next lesson video, which again, there, but stressing the importance of a family.
In 1970, Rabbi Nosson Gurary and his wife set out on shlichus, establishing the Chabad Student Center at State University of New York, Buffalo.
On the first year after I was already in Buffalo, I went in with my late wife to the Rebbe, and the Rebbe gave tremendous brachas. Among the things that he said was that there should be a dira b'tachtonim in the city of Buffalo and all the communities around. But the Rebbe ended with his holy words that the Nekuda Hapnimius from Alts, which means all the things that he blessed till now, the Nekuda Hapnimius von Alts is Chassidische Naches von the Kinder. Which means that the Rebbe made it very clear that the most important thing, he said already, Dir B'Tachtonim, you would think what could come after that. He specifically said, but the Nekuda Hapnimius von Alts is Chassidische Nachas von the Kinder.
So here, what was Rebbe communicating over here? You could be doing great things in Buffalo. And yes, I know because many of you guys know him. This is Richard Glick's first rabbi, person who brought him into Chabad. He always speaks about Rabbi Garari. But this is, so Rebbe's communicating, you could be doing great things in Buffalo, but don't forget about the kids. And, I'll speak honestly, and, this is something which Goldie, my wife, is very good at grounding me because, thank God with Chabad and growing, trying to do a lot of things. Sometimes, I'll get lost, I'll get busy with things. And, Goldie's very, very into, we have to make time for the kids. And, while we do, we try to do events and do things, but there has to be that focus on the family, because without that family unit, that, again, as we said before, this is the ultimate way of bringing God into this world. So to recap, what we're saying is that there is a trend in the past. 1974, the Rebbe was saying there's already a trend happening of erosion of a family unit. How are we able to fix that? By recognizing the value, going to the root of it, recognizing the value of a family. A family is not just a means to an end. It's not just a side benefit we get, but through being able to put effort into building that cohesive family, then we are able to bring God's presence more down into this world in a greater way. Now, which leads us to the next point. And that is, we live in a society where, what have you done for me lately? It's all about, people have become into, what has the society, whether it's my friend, have done for me. Now, if a person lives with such an attitude, that is very easy to lead to family fragmentation. Because again, then it becomes a very calculated idea. Is it worth it for me to be able to spend the effort and invest the energy in working on the family? Is it, again, if it's about me, if it's about what I'm going to receive from it, then sometimes it's worth it, and then sometimes it's more worth it for me to, go my own path. I don't want to expend that effort. However, if we approach family with a sense of purpose, that this is a divine and sacred job, and we spoke about last week, our workplace is divine, is sacred, is holy. If we are able to focus on family and strengthening the family as a job that God gave us to cultivate, and this is the number one job, then it becomes less about me and less about what I will gain from it, and more about, this is why I was created. This is my mission in life. So we can have, again, if your value is what can I gain, then the work is not always worth the benefit. You may have a lot of effort, the results may be small. I'll say, I'm just not going to do this. But if it's what can I do, then the effort will be small, the results will be large. Because again, it's not about, a person's attitude becomes very different. This idea the Rebbe expresses in a letter, in text number 6. I trust it is unnecessary to emphasize to you at length that the Jewish way of life, together with its customs, is not only very significant in general, but also in every detail and the very order of things. In light of this, it becomes obvious how important a peace and a harmony between a husband and wife, since the mitzvah of making peace between a husband and wife is counted amongst the mitzvot whose fruits a Jew enjoys in this world, while the capital remains for the world to come. These are mentioned right at the beginning of the Siddur, together with the morning blessings, which are said even before starting the actual morning prayers. With this approach in mind, it will prove somewhat easier to understand that even if one party were to be completely in the right, or almost completely in the right, while the other party was completely in the wrong, or almost completely in the wrong, it would still be incumbent upon both parties to do everything in their power to restore peace and harmony. As to the situation itself, namely who was right and who was wrong, I cannot, of course, go into this, nor is it necessary in light of what has been said above. But the important thing, as already stated, is to strengthen the family ties, this being the overriding consideration. However, it would be well if you could find a mutual friend before whom both of you could unburden yourself in a frank exchange of grievance. It is possible that an outsider, who at the same time is a friend, might see more objectively and find the best way to straighten things out in the soonest possible time, so that once again, peace and harmony may reign in the home. It's very clear from this letter. Again, I don't know the background of this letter, but it's very clear that we're talking about someone that was having challenges in their marriage. Now, again, in the context, it was between husband and wife. But this idea doesn't just apply if it's a husband and wife. It can apply in any and all family relationships, and not just in family relationships, in all the relationships we have in general. And what is the overarching idea? Let's go back to the marriage where the Rebbe spoke about. If shalom bayis, the peace and the harmony in the home, is the value, then who is right and who is wrong becomes less important. Because if it's about me, so then if I'm right, why should I be willing to compromise? Why should I be willing to give in? Again, it's about what I can benefit over here. But if the value is itself having that peaceful home, then you are going to want to work together. And it may be, yes, I may be right, but that's not relevant right now, because me being right is not going to lead to a peaceful home. And this is and again, obviously, this is not to say, obviously there's always exceptions, and obviously there are some difficult people, and sometimes situations are untenable. And sometimes Rebbe spoke about there's a need for people to break up for a little bit, or for a divorce to happen. Torah speaks about the idea of divorce. So obviously, there was not giving it's not black and white. Obviously, there's every situation has to be looked upon the same. But the idea the Rebbe is conveying is that if a person has the idea of the peace in the home and the family as the value, and be able to have a cohesiveness together, then it becomes less about me and if I'm right, and more about what can I do to strengthen the family dynamic. And again, if you recognize this is the way God comes into this world, and this is how we are able to connect with Hashem, the first and foremost way, then that value takes so much precedence. And this is something which is not easy. This is not easy in relationships, as we said before. Relationships are complicated. Relationships are difficult. The woman who inscribes on her husband's tomb, "Thou shalt rest at peace until we meet once again." So relationships are messy, and and part of relationships are there's going to be arguments, and that's healthy. But behind all that, behind the difficulties if there is that overarching value of what we're here for, we're here to have that family unit. We're here to bring peace and harmony, recognizing this is my purpose in life. And then we are able to recognize that we are to put this on a pedestal. This is something I want to work to. And this is going back to what I spoke about last week. And the Rebbe speaks about this often, Chassidus speaks about this, is that there is no duality in this world. Everything in this world is to bring us closer to Hashem. And therefore, that applies to our workplace, to our family home. If Hashem put us in a situation, that means this is our mission in life. So when it comes to work, we said, it's to be able to bring holiness into the work, to be able to work with someone else. If it means that in a family situation, in a home situation, in a relationship situation, if you're experiencing difficulty, it means that right now, what God wants from you, what your mission in life is, to be able to work towards fixing that, towards being able to have that value of peace and harmony, and be able to bring that into your life. Now, So this is all general ideas, general values. What is some practical advice? What is some practical advice that the Rebbe gave in order to be able to strengthen the family unit? So this is, and Dov mentioned this earlier, on the first practical level, the Rebbe said that there is an issue that families don't spend time together. Families just, and this many times this is justified, especially in today's day and age. People are busy, whether it's children in school and college, a spouse, both of them are work for many hours a day. People have responsibilities. But when people don't spend time with one another, that erodes the foundation. To be able to have a strong foundation, you have to be able to spend time, like the Rebbe in the video said. The Rebbe was very busy, but he made sure every single day, be what may, the Rebbe was dealing with world issues, but the Rebbe would not give, just like the Rebbe wouldn't give up his tefillin, the Rebbe wouldn't give up his tea with his wife. So the Rebbe said, every Friday night, and again, this may seem to be obvious to many of us, who values the idea of Shabbos, but the Rebbe said, spending Shabbos together is not only something you want to do because you're religious, even if you're not religious, but the idea of having just that time with a family together, putting away the phone, being able to focus on one another. That itself is something which will strengthen the foundation and the fabric of family life. And I tell this often to people. Someone says, I'm not ready to keep Shabbos. I understand that. Shabbos is not an easy thing to do. I tell them, but put away your phone, the social media, for a couple hours on Shabbos. Friday night, sitting down for a meal, put it away. You have the full week. It's distracting. You have the social media, Facebook and the stock market and this and that, what's the news and the politics. Give yourself a couple hours, even if you're not ready to put away the whole Shabbos. Give it up 4 or 5 hours a week. It brings so much peace and serenity in a person's life. Then you're able to sit, and this could even be done if you're by yourself. Even if you're by yourself, have a couple of hours where I'm focusing on something which is more important than just the regular day-to-day of life. And who said what in the political scene, and who said what, and what is the latest gossip out there. This is the idea that the Rebbe said this is so important. I will read it inside, but actually I'm on an exchange with people giving this course, other rabbis giving this course, and the rabbi, his name was Rabbi Benny Zippel from Salt Lake City. He said, he was giving his review about this class, and he said it's interesting. He's from Utah, and he said the Mormons came up with a similar idea. The Mormons were saying that that they saw that there was a lack of family time. And they made a study, the Mormons made a study, and they said, based on their study, a family living together, the amount of time a family spends together a week, and this is besides for just like, a meal together or sleeping together, was less than half hour a week, a full week. This is our average family. So the Mormons put together an idea called family time, where families have to sit together a certain amount of time every single day or every single week. And we have this baked in. The idea of a Shabbos is there once a week, or twice a week, Friday night, Shabbos day, whatever it is, to be able to sit together without any outside distractions. This is the idea that Rebbe says in text number 8. One solution for this challenge is to emphasize something that is already important for other reasons. Efforts should be made to ensure that all family members come together, beginning with Friday evening and especially on a Friday night when the Shabbat meal is served. Parents and children should gather in the same room, around the same table, engage in conversation fitting for Shabbat. On Shabbat, it's easier for the family to unite because family members aren't engaged in their weekly endeavors. When the family nurtures this unity on Shabbat, it will experience unity throughout the week. The factors that unite them, cultivated during the Shabbat meal, will prevail over their differing focus areas so that their differences only complement each other. Achieving such unity within the family is not likely to occur spontaneously because the importance of the family unit has been overlooked for several years. We must acknowledge that this area demands dedicated attention and effort. Fortunately, the Talmud assures us that diligent work will yield positive results. So this is one of the practical ideas that Rebbe said, to be able to cultivate a family. And again, this is for someone, whether you have family living with you, whether even if a person's alone. Try to make Friday night a special time. Maybe it means inviting someone over to your house to enjoy the Shabbat meal together. Maybe it's getting together with a friend. But the idea of having a Friday night to strengthen our relationships, if it's in a family, idea of a family, that's great. If it's not an idea of family, it's about cultivating a strong relationship with someone else, that also. But the idea is, here's a time where we're able to focus on our relationships, on our cohesiveness, on the foundation, on our roots. Because ultimately, if our whole life is about running from one job to the other and running about, after the next dollar, then our foundation will erode. This was one practical suggestion with the idea of how we are going to how to strengthen this unit, this Shabbat with the family. So it's quality time and unifying discussion, no technological distraction. With that, we will move on to the next lesson video, which is speaking about another idea, and that is, we'll go through it, we'll look inside afterwards, but the Rebbe made many practical, the Rebbe came out with a mitzvah campaign. The Rebbe chose 10 mitzvahs to be focused on. So some of them, everyone's familiar with some of the Rebbe's mitzvah campaigns. The idea of putting on tefillin. Mention put on tefillin. You go to the Western Wall. Someone's going to ask you to put on tefillin. You go to Times Square, especially on Friday afternoon. You put on tefillin. Very possible someone over here was asked if they're Jewish. Shabbat candles. But the Rebbe had 10 mitzvah campaigns, and a number of them was focused on the idea of mitzvos, which can be done in the home. And again, all of them were done around this time of 1974, when the Rebbe, that year, when the Rebbe was bemoaning the lack of cohesiveness in the family, the Rebbe then comes out with many different mitzvah campaigns, which stress the idea of the family coming together to do something positive. So let's take a look at this video, followed by we'll take a look inside.
In the late 1970s, Charles Ramat had a number of audiences with the Rebbe. During one of these meetings, he asked the Rebbe about something he was struggling with.
I told him, Rebbe, I'm having a crisis of faith. I really do not believe. I love Judaism. I love a lot of the rituals, but for me, they're nostalgic. How do I find true faith and true belief? And it's almost like we had philosophic discussions, but they were the things that were really bothering me more than should I invest in this property or should I invest in that property. And the Rebbe's responses were absolutely deep and incredible. And they were tailor-made to me. It wasn't a system that he said, you have to go into this system and you will be better. He really, I felt, was speaking to what would work for me. And he asked me, do you keep kashrut? And I said, no. Which, by the way, took a lot of guts to sit in front of the Rebbe and say that. It was actually a terrifying moment. But, my relationship was based on total honesty. How could you lie to the Rebbe? He says, do you put on tefillin every day? I said, no. He said, so I'm going to ask you to do one thing. If I ask you to do one thing without any precondition, will you do it? I said, yes. Anything you ask me, I promise you I will do it. He says, will you and your wife agree to light Shabbat candles every Friday night while you're married? I said, done. And we weren't at that point. We have never missed in half a century lighting Shabbat candles. My children, when they grew up, even though they went to secular schools, Friday night and Shabbat, not the day of Shabbat, but Friday night was sacrosanct. Nobody went out. When my kids were teenagers, no parties. I had all kinds of business meetings, dinner invitations, fun things to go do. Friday night is Shabbat, we're home. We never missed lighting the candles. And I would say that simple mitzvah which is one out of, 500 that I'm not doing, has kept my family on a Jewish path throughout our lives.
Shmuel Abramson works in special education and lives in Monsey, New York. As a college student in the mid-1970s, he decided to reconnect to his Jewish heritage.
When I later transferred out of my school because I became interested in, finding the right path, and at one time I was going to come to yeshiva in Crown Heights, and at the last minute I backed out. I was confused. I didn't know what to do. I ended up going to Yeshiva University. It was there that I met my wife, and my wife had come from a modern Orthodox family, and we started seeing each other and growing together. When we eventually became engaged, we scheduled an appointment with the Rebbe. Now, I didn't know how it worked. I was told, put your name down on a piece of paper, put your mother's name down, that we're just going to give the Rebbe that, and the Rebbe's going to give us a blessing, that's it. But I didn't want to miss the opportunity. So, some of the details I don't remember exactly, but I remember that I took 2 pieces of paper. And one I wrote, I figured that the Gebayim, the secretary, is going to collect one and give it to the Rebbe, but I wrote on another one, Rebbe, I'd like to ask you some questions. We came in, the Rebbe looked at me, the Rebbe looked at the piece of paper, and he said, you'd like to ask me some questions? And the second question was, I said, how do I and my Kala achieve compatibility? I said these words, I said, my lifestyle in the past was beyond her wildest nightmares. And how do we achieve compatibility? So the Rebbe looked at me, and then he said, are these your only 2 questions? And I said, yes. And he gave a big smile, looked at both of us, and he said, then you're going to be a very happy couple. And when the Rebbe said that, I felt like the whole room breathed a sigh of relief. I felt totally relaxed after that. The smile was a smile that lit up the room. And and by the Rebbe saying that, by the way, that you're going to be a very happy couple, Blian Hara, after 36 years, that's rings true. The Rebbe answered the first question first that I asked, and the second question second. And he said in the realm of the compatibility question, he says, we need to have a common goal. He says, my goal, he said to me, is to strengthen my wife in Torah and mitzvahs. Her goal is to strengthen me in Torah and mitzvahs. And he said, and we should learn together. He suggested at that time, because of my lack of background at the time, we should learn Kitzur Shulchan Aruch, he said, and he said he believes that it's in English, we could learn it in English, we should learn together. And he said, then when we take this common goal of fortifying each other, and we have children, we'll be able to communicate and give our goal over to the child in Torah and mitzvahs. And he says all the differences will become dissipated in that common goal.
Mrs. Rachel Fogelman and her husband have been shluchim in Worcester, Massachusetts since 1947.
I would speak, and I organized groups of not women that belonged to the yeshiva, women that were outside of the yeshiva, outside of the fringe of our sphere. And I spoke, and they always asked me to do book reviews. And whenever I did a book review, no matter what the book, I always brought in something about Yiddishkeit and used the book review as a vehicle to speak about Torah and Yiddishkeit and to draw them closer. We went in for Yechidus, and the Rebbe just greeted us so beautifully and so warmly. And my husband mentioned to the Rebbe that the following week I was going to speak at the temple, and I was going to do a book review on The Chosen, Chaim Potok. The Rebbe looked at me, and he looked at me in the way that only the Rebbe could look at someone, with a deep perception, with a knowledgeable, otherworldly perception. And he looked and he said, they're going to listen to you. And then the Rebbe said, speak about Taras HaMishpacha. Well, I was taken aback. I would love to speak about Taras HaMishpacha, but this book, The Chosen, is a book about boys, about the relationship of a son and his father. And I thought, how am I going to bring that and speak about Taras HaMishpacha? But the Rebbe said, speak about Taras HaMishpacha. There was no question. That's what I had to do. Now, the main sanctuary in the temple is a very large, large room. It must hold about 1,000 people. It's huge. And pretty soon, the room began to fill up and fill up more and more until there was standing room in the back, and women were standing there. And so I thought, okay, I'm going to do this. And I started out with a book by Chaim Potok. I described the scene, what it meant. And then I mentioned, did you notice that there are no women in this book? Did you notice that the father's wife is not mentioned? The son's mother is not brought to light? And there's no relationship between men and women. The reason there's no relationship in this book, because to touch upon it would require a book in itself. The relationship between men and women in Jewish life is holy and precious, and it is based on Taras HaMishpacha. And I went on from there, and I explained what Taras HaMishpacha was, what it meant to us, and why it was a flaw in the book and a flaw in most Jewish lives, because people are unaware of it. The audience was electrified. People called me up, women called me up, where is the mikveh that you spoke of? There was an old mikveh on the east side that was used by very few women. It was in such a decrepit old building. So what we knew, we needed a new building, and this started a campaign for a new mikveh building. That was how it began, and ultimately we built a mikveh here in Worcester. We have to realize that koiches pnimium, inner strengths that the Eibishter gives us, is what the Rebbe sees in us all the time. And he strengthens us in such a way and directs us in such a way that those koiches pnimium are brought to a fruition that they have positive and actual results in reality.
Okay, so based on that, those few stories, so if you take a look, again, as I mentioned before, the Rebbe made some mitzvah campaigns. And again, all of them were based upon something that you could do in a family, something that could be done in a family as a family unit, which again will strengthen the family. So if you take a look at page 46, we're going to have to skip a few texts because it's a little bit, time is ticking. But if you take a look at text at page 46, the first campaign the Rebbe said was tzedakah, but it was not this idea of giving charity. As the details, every home should have a tzedakah box. It will remind the household to give tzedakah daily. It should be attached to the kitchen wall to ensure it is noticed. In other words, when a family has the attitude, and they walk into the dining room and they see a tzedakah pushka, which means there's an attitude of giving in this family. We're here to give to others, to the family. That itself is able to strengthen the family bond. The next mitzvah was a home filled with holy books. A Jewish home needs Jewish sacred texts. For starters, a siddur, a Tehillim, books of both prayer and study. The nucleus should be expanded to embrace additional sacred values. Again, this is a mitzvah which is based for the home, telling us the importance of the Jewish home. There's the mezuzah, obviously having the mezuzah, which brings security to the home, brings protection, brings a certain spiritual halo to the home. People walk in, a family walks in, this is a Jewish home. They have Torah study. As we saw over there, they have encouraged in the home, not just when you go to shul, not just when you in the home, have some Torah study. They have encouraged people to learn, whether it's husband and wife together, whether it's a parent and child. It could be over the phone with someone, a family member or friend outside. But the idea of having Torah study where you live, the idea of Shabbat holiday candles, we don't have to go into that, how that brings the family together, as we saw in the video over there, but just the idea of every Friday night, having a Shabbos meal, having the Shabbat candles, it brings a certain unity to the home. The kosher, again, this idea, a home-based mitzvah, and family purity, as we just saw, the idea of this is, again, really a lesson on its own, but the idea of family purity brings a certain sacredness to our relationship and is able to bring a certain sanctity to the marriage and to the home. And all these ideas, all these mitzvah campaigns was based upon the home. Now we see over here, this is for anyone. Most of these mitzvahs apply to whether you're living with family, whether you're living alone, but it's the idea, the value of the home, bringing God into the home, bringing God into the family. This is all what is so important. And I don't have too much time left, but I'd like to wrap up and so what we've been speaking about till now was the power of the family as a collective. The family coming together as a collective, recognizing they're part of one whole. You know, the whole is greater than the sum of parts. This is an important value to have. However, there can be something dangerous about that. If we always think of ourselves as part of a whole, as part of something greater than ourselves, what can sometimes be lacking? The individuality of every single person. If my whole importance is the fact that I'm part of something bigger than myself, then I may overlook what my own individual talents, am able to give over to the society, to my family. And that is a danger in general. And this is not only when it comes to family. When we speak about community, community is something which is beautiful. You know, we always speak about the value of community. But what is the danger of community? When you just focus on the community, then someone can feel like I'm just one of many. I'm not myself important. Yeah, exactly. In other words, if community is taken to the extreme, if the idea of a family, let's say cohesiveness, part of something bigger than ourselves, is taken to the extreme, then where is that own individuality, which is important? To be more, to use out your own talents, be able to find what can I give over here. And that's why in other occasions, the Rebbe spoke about how it is also, while it's important to focus on the family unity and the idea of being part of something bigger than yourselves, we're also not able to forget about the individual. I speak for myself. You know, this is a challenge when it comes to raising my family. You know, I have 5 boys, and you know, thank God they're rambunctious and they're wild, and you want to be able to kind of bring them together, but then you also have to sometimes stop and say, how is each child unique? How do I have to parent them in a way that this one is different than the other one? Yes, you want to bring them together as a family, but then you also have to focus on the individual talents and the individual needs of each and every single one of them. And this is another important point to stress. As we're finishing to speak about the power of being a part of a collective, and again, whether it's in a family setting, whether it's in a community setting, whether it's in a setting of friends with one another, to not forget about the individual and their own, you know, what they are able to give. And this idea we see in text 10a. The Talmud note, and this is actually very interesting. You know, Alan, you mentioned before the idea of communism. So what is communism on a lesser, perhaps you want to say in a more kosher way? So in Israel, what do we have? A kibbutz. The kibbutz, where there's a collective. So the Rebbe writes this letter. This letter is not even about the family. This letter, the Rebbe wrote to Mr. Kadish Luz, who was an Israeli politician who served as a minister of agriculture from 1959 to 1959. He was a speaker of the Knesset from 1959 to 1969. And the Rebbe speaks about the benefits, but also the pitfalls of the kibbutz life. And the Rebbe says, text 10a, the Talmud notes that just as people's faces differ from one another, so do their minds. Therefore, individuals attain contentment and wholeness when they actualize their personal and unique potential in its fullest measure. This level of satisfaction is not found to the same extent when they engage in manners that they share in common with others. Instead, it is achieved through engaging in things they excel at, and that set them apart from their companions and surrounding. This achievement allows them to express their essence. On the other hand, human nature is not to live in solitude. It is not good for the human to be alone. And it is our nature to seek social interactions that allow us to reach our completeness. So how are we able to, there seems to be this dichotomy. Should we be looking at areas where we're distinct from one another? On the other hand, we want to be together with other people. How do we put these two, so to say, contrasts together? So the Rebbe continues. On the one hand, collective living is essential because it provides a structure for people to share resources through which great things can be attained, greater even than the sum of individual strengths. On the other hand, collective living is not an end in itself. It is a preparatory stage to the development of each person's individuality and uniqueness, allowing it to be realized in the best and to the fullest measure. Often, the idea of collective living arouses in members an inner resistance against the order that seeks to subdue the individual's uniqueness and endeavors to transform the individual into members of the larger block. If, however, people are informed that their collective living leads to personal development and maximizes their ability to reach even greater personal goals by freeing them from the worries of less important goals, it would not only neutralize their natural resistance, but increase their passion and commitment to their roles within the group. In other words, Judaism tells we have to encompass both truths. We have to have the ability that we recognize we're part of a greater unit, whether it's a family unit, whether it's a community unit, whether it's a kibbutz, while not forgetting about each person individually. And the truth is, this is something which we're able to see. Studies show that children that grow up in more of a healthy family, with a father and mother, which are together, and they're in a healthy family unit as part of the, so to say, the collective of family, they're more likely to grow up and being able to express their individuality. Going back to how we started off, a family, we said, is like a tree. If the stronger the roots you have, the stronger you're connected to your roots, have that healthy family dynamic, then the more likely you are to be able, the tree is able to give off its own unique fruit. And therefore, these are two sides of one coin. Being able to recognize we're part of this something bigger than ourselves, which expresses itself in the family or beyond the family. And then we're not to forget about the individual itself. And this we see text 11, which is this is a letter the Rebbe wrote to children. Over here you have a leader of the Jewish people, one of the greatest leaders, and he writes a letter to children. How many Jewish leaders write a letter to children? To all Jewish children everywhere, God bless you all. Greetings and blessings. I am now presenting in greater detail my suggestion and urgent request to each of you, boy and girl, to turn your bedroom, your bed, your table, and so on, into a miniature home of Torah, prayer, and good deeds. You can do this by using your personal space and furniture to study some Torah. Recite a prayer, put money into the tzedakah box, and the like daily. You should own your own siddur and pray from it there, your own chumash or other Torah books, and study it there. And keep your tzedakah box over there. You should follow the Jewish custom of inscribing on the inside of your siddur and sacred books of the Hebrew words Lashem Harsham Loa, meaning the earth and all its contents belong to God, with your name below it. If possible, write your name on your tzedakah box as well. What is the idea the Rebbe is speaking over here? Very powerful. The Rebbe wasn't saying, maybe if we're part of one family, let us all share a siddur. Let us all share a chumash. The Rebbe was saying, let every child have their own siddur, have their own chumash, have their own pushka. And every one of my children's rooms, we have their own pushka and their own siddur, because let them feel yes, I'm part of a family, but I also have a uniqueness. I also have what that belongs to myself. And just like, I may have my own, feelings and whatever my hobbies are, let that also be infused in Judaism, that you have your own individuality. Yeah. In other words, it goes together. Once I feel that I am unique, then I'm able to, as you're saying, give towards the family unit. This is we'll finish off with the last lesson video.
Nee. Nee, maar die was gleich gesagt, wir wollen im Ben Schlief.
Vader Gassene?
Vader Gassene, das ist nicht bei uns. Die Ricke ist, das hilft, das Masel ist, wir wollen im Leichten, was Frieden, nicht warten bei der Gassene.
Ah, okay.
Nicht kommt bei dieser Brüche Vader Gassene, weißt du?
Miriam Vashem Biskari.
Den Schuh steht, da der Mazdocke, double portion of blessing. Sie Ben Schlief. Was? Sie Ben Schlief.
Der Rebbe fragt sich, der Mensch liegt auf Shabbos. Sie sind licht? Nein.
מה הגיל שלו? שנתיים. אבל הוא כבר התחילו להדליק נרות. כן, אבל תיתנו להדלקה ביום שישי הבא. שלא יכול להצלוח.
Okay, halt die Versingen schon.
Ja, ein guter Besuch.
Mijn vijf zijn er, kom maar, Hansi, kom her. Der brief toch?
Du bist nicht. Du bist nicht.
Noch nicht.
Noch nicht. Weil die jetzt etwas Sonne im Schnee erzählt, noch geben das aufs Dorf, wo ich nicht. Und noch hat ich zwar, und zu manchen waren später Regen. Warum weiß ich nicht, dass ich sich in 3 Jahren
Er hat noch nicht
Dann die Kinder leben. So dann bestimmt die gute wir haben mal lustig gemacht.
So just to give some background, in certain communities, the custom is for girls to only start lighting Shabbat candles once they get married. But the Rebbe was very strong into the idea that girls should from already 3 years old, should start lighting Shabbat candles. I'm going to tell you, I know it's already 9 o'clock. I'm going to tell you a quick family story. There's a personal story that happened in my family. I have a cousin from Toronto. Not part of my Chabad family. Both my parents, my father and mother, did not grow up in Chabad family. They became Chabad in their teenage years. And my father has a niece who comes from a non-Chabad family. This is, so to say, not against Chabad, but very different than the Chabad way. In 1990, my cousin, my father's niece, my cousin was learning in seminary in Manchester, England. And she came down with a dreaded disease, with cancer. As an 18-year-old, she was heading to Manchester. My brother, who was in New York at the time learning, my older brother, so my brother went with my grandmother to ask for a blessing for my grandmother's granddaughter. And the Rebbe goes by the Rebbe, this was during dollars, and the Rebbe asked my grandmother asked for a blessing for her granddaughter who just got diagnosed with cancer. And he said, does she light Shabbat candles? Now, again, my cousin was not from a Chabad family, so their custom was only do it once it reaches marriage. So my grandmother kind of shook her head. So the Rebbe said, let her light Shabbat candles and her mazel will shine. Let her light. So once my grandmother calls her daughter and says, this is what the Rebbe said. Now there was a dilemma because this was not their family custom, and they felt, we go by our family custom. But ultimately, they went to their, so to say, their rabbis, and the rabbi said, listen, if the Lubavitcher Rebbe said this, she should listen. So that she lit Shabbat candles that Friday night. That next Tuesday, she went for appointment. Now, her previous appointment was done in Toronto, where she lived, and now they were going to transfer everything. They were going to transfer everything to England, where she was learning. And again, I know this first person. This is my cousin. Because they were supposed to fax it over. They were never able to get the X-rays. They were able to get that. They took new X-rays. They didn't find anything. The cancer was gone. Again, this is a story, first person with my cousin, but this is a story about the Rebbe speaking about lighting Shabbat candles and how it affected my family in a very tangible way. This is a story with my cousin. So just to wrap up, the Rebbe speaks about the value of a family needing to work together. And the first step to recognize that this is a value is not a means to end, but the idea of being together as a family is something of extreme value, is something which is what brings Hashem down into this world. And this is the mission of why we are here in this world. How do we do this? So there's practical suggestions, whether it means being able to work on compromise, recognizing that it's not about if I'm right or wrong, but it's about coming to a place of peace and harmony, being able to sit together on Friday night, having a Shabbat meal together. And then it's infusing the home with mitzvahs. And again, this could be even if you're living alone, bringing mitzvahs into your home based upon all those mitzvahs which are for a home. That brings God into the home and that strengthens the home. And this is the idea. So again, everyone is able to work at this because everyone has their home they're able to strengthen. And again, whether it's you're living with a family, whether you have a connection with a family, or you're living alone, everyone is able to strengthen that area. And this is the idea of today. Next week, we will discuss, we'll move on. Next week's class is called Wholesome Health, which is thousands of people address the Rebbe every single day, every single week about health. This was physicians, this was patients across, and what was the Rebbe's directives to them to be able to live a healthier life, to live, be able to have a more wholesome life, and that we will, God willing, do next week, Monday, same time, same place.
Man who has the law, can be like Shabbos here?
Yes, not only he should. In other words, the home should be lit for the mitzvah of lighting Shabbat candles is on the home. Now, the woman it became the woman's mitzvah if there's a woman in the house. But if there's no woman in the house, then the man lights it. I've lit, a few times. Goldie, I think most of my children were born either on Thursday or Friday, and Goldie was in the hospital for Shabbos. That happened. I lit Shabbat candles in my house in order that we should have Shabbat candles for Shabbos.
Yesterday, my granddaughter's husband
Yeah.
left yesterday